It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of January 25th, 2002. We got 4 films to look at today, so we don't have a whole lot of time here. Let's go ahead and jump on into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, the latest Nicholas Sparks movie, Mandy Moore and Shane West in A Walk to Remember. So the story goes that this takes place in Beaufort, North Carolina, as a prank on a student goes wrong and puts him in the hospital. You have Landon, played by Shane West, a popular student who has no plans for the future, who's held responsible and is forced to join after-school community service activities, which include starring in the lead in the play. Participating in these activities is Jamie Sullivan, the Reverend's daughter, who has great ambitions and has nothing in common with Landon. She's played by Mandy Moore. So when Landon decides he wants to take his activities seriously, he asks Jamie for help and begins to spend most of his time with her. They start to get along, which he does not expect to happen, which, how could you not in a story like this? They develop a relationship, but much to the chagrin of Landon's old popular friends and Jamie's strict Reverend father. But with a heartbreaking secret becoming known that puts the relationship to the test, it is then Landon and Jamie realizing the true meaning of love and fate. And if you've seen a Nicholas Sparks movie, you know how this is going to end. So, yeah, this is pretty mediocre. Even though it has the director, Adam Shakeman, who is a pretty decent director. He's made some movies that are pretty fun. Like, I like Bringing Down the House. I like The Pacifier. I even like stuff like Cheaper by the Dozen 2 and What Men Want. Hairspray is probably his best film overall. And as much as I think he's a decent director, he can't really save this movie. As much as Mandy Moore is doing the best she can with this, she really can't save it either. Shane West is everyone's trying their best in this movie. Shane West, Peter Coyote, Daryl Hannah, but the story itself is just pretty bland. It's very much a predictable movie. Most of Nicholas Sparks' movies are very predictable. People forget when The Notebook came out. That was one of those successes that worked because you had 2 Oscar-caliber actors in Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams in there who made that material work, and a good director that can make that material work. And it's his most popular story. But everyone wanted to create their new Notebook, but this was before The Notebook came out. And it just didn't really work. It just didn't really work, and it just shows that The Notebook was a lightning in a bottle moment where it all came together. But everything else that's been done based off of Nicholas Sparks' material has either ended in disaster or has ended up in a film that's very mediocre. And this is a very mediocre film. It's not bad. It's not that it's a bad movie. It's just a bland movie, and there's nothing really about it that makes it all that special. I mean, if you can tell that these are sets that were literally taken from the set of Dawson's Creek, there's kind of a problem here, and it kind of shows right from the get-go. And you don't really buy their chemistry together. Shane West and Mandy Moore, the chemistry just really isn't there for it to really give this movie the lift that it needs to really be something special. And it's just not there, sadly. I mean, there's a lot here that could work, but it just doesn't. It's a movie that feels like a major letdown because the potential is there. I mean, these are 2 really good actors who were in 2 really good shows at the time. One of them was in a really good show at the time, Once and Again, and Mandy Moore was a solid musician. This was actually her first feature film debut, but as we've seen later on down the road in stuff like Tangled and also This Is Us, she can be a really good actress. But here, it's just not enough to carry the film over, unfortunately. So, yeah, not much more to say about that one. That's A Walk to Remember. So let's move on to the next movie, and that is Guy Pearce, Jim Caviezel, and Richard Harris in The Count of Monte Cristo. The Count of Monte Cristo, king for a day. I'm sorry, every time I think of The Count of Monte Cristo, I think of that song that Daffy Duck sings in Looney Tunes. But this is The Count of Monte Cristo, the classic Alexander Dumas storyline, and it basically follows the same plot as the novel, about the story of imprisonment, revenge preserved, but with many elements, including the relationship between the main 2 characters and the ending modified. And if you want to know the real story behind that, instead of what Wikipedia is telling you, let's go to IMDb, and they'll have a more detailed description of what this movie is about. So, Edmond Dantes is a sailor and falsely accused of treason by his best friend Fernand, who wants Dantes' girlfriend Mercedes for himself. Dantes is imprisoned on the island prison of Chateau d'Ilf for 13 years, where he plots revenge against those who betrayed him. With the help of another prisoner, he escapes from the island and proceeds to transform himself into the wealthy Count of Monte Cristo as part of his plan to exact revenge. And, this was what I think a movie like The Musketeer was trying to do. Take a classic story and create a new modernized version of it for a new generation, but that one didn't work out well at all. But this one surprisingly works really well. I was actually really surprised at how much I enjoyed this movie. This is directed by Kevin Reynolds, who you may be very familiar with his work with Kevin Costner, who did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Rapa Nui and Waterworld. But as outside of that, like he's done some stuff that's been good as a director. He did the Hatfields and McCoys for A&E, which was actually really good. I think he gets more flack for some of the movies he's made, because he's made some movies that were not big hits for obvious reasons, like Tristan and Isolde was not that great of a movie, or Risen was not that great of a film. 187, Rapa Nui, Waterworld was a big bomb when that came out, of course, but he could be a really good director, and I like what he does with this. He does with this kind of like what he does with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Gives it the classic, sticks with the classic story, but gives it its own modern look to it that makes it stand out more than I think a lot of people would give it credit for. And the performances are really good. Jim Caviezel, Guy Pearce, Richard Harris, all very good in the film. Luis Guzman has a really good role in this too, that's kind of outside of his normal characters that we're used to seeing him as. It's a really good movie, man. I actually say definitely check it out. You would think that it's dumped in the middle of January because the studio didn't believe in it, but surprisingly works. It's actually a very solid film that I would say definitely check it out if you haven't seen it, because it is definitely worth a watch. And seeing something new and different with the storyline that's been done before, but with this new twist, I think it actually is something that actually does work out very well. It's something I highly recommend checking out, The Count of Monte Cristo. So with that said, on to the next movie, and that is Richard Gere in The Mothman Prophecies. Am I supposed to be scared by that? Because I certainly wasn't, but The Mothman Prophecies, based off of a 1975 book of the same name, but Richard Gere here playing a reporter who researches the legend of the Mothman, who's still shaken up from the death of his wife 2 years earlier from a glioblastoma. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but Gere's character is sent to cover a news piece and ends up inexplicably finding himself at Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where there has been sightings of an unusual creature and unexplained phenomenon. As he becomes increasingly drawn into mysterious forces and work, he hopes that they can reconnect him to his wife, while the local sheriff, played by Laura Linney, becomes concerned about his obsessions. Now, around here, the Mothman's kind of well known around my neck of the woods. I live in western Pennsylvania, and West Virginia is literally right below us. And if you don't know the story of the Mothman, it was a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area between November of '66 and December of '67. And the first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, titled, "Couple Sees Man-Sized Bird, Creature Something." The national press soon picked the reports up and helped spread the story across the U.S. The source of the legend is believed to have originated from sightings out of migration sandhill cranes or herons. And every once in a while around here, you'll see people with Mothman stuff here. So it's kind of a little bit of a folk legend around here. I don't know too much about it to really say anything about it myself. But I can tell you that this movie did not leave much of a lasting impact on me, because I didn't really get to see a lot of it. I only seen like little bits and pieces, and even for the little bits and pieces that I've seen from it, it wasn't scary. It really was not, and it's one of those movies where the potential is possibly there. This is a really good director, Mark Pellington, who had just done Arlington Road, which is a criminally underrated movie, and he would follow this up with a really good YouTube movie, U2 3D, that came out in theaters in 2008. But as far as the movie itself goes, this is not that great of a film, and it's just kind of a dull horror movie that has too much. I think it's above most horror movies because it's got a stellar cast. It includes Richard Gere, Laura Linney, Deborah Messing, Will Patton. I mean, these are some notable names in this movie. Names that you would not think would be in a film like this, and yet here they are. And you kind of wish there was a much better movie for them to work on besides this. But other than that, though, an idea that could have some potential, but it never really fully lives up to it. And it doesn't even give you really much of an explanation of what the Mothman really is when it's all said and done. And I don't know. I thought it was kind of a letdown, honestly, the more I thought about it. From the little bits that I've seen from it, I haven't seen it in full, but from what I saw from it, I only saw maybe about 75% of it. And even by then, I was just kind of like, I have no real intentions on watching the rest of this movie, quite frankly, and, that's not much more I gotta say about that one. So that's The Mothman Prophecy. So let's go ahead and move on to our last movie, which is Kung Pao Enter the Fist. Kung Pao Enter the Fist is written, directed by, and starring Steve O'Derrick, who you may be familiar with his work with the Ace Ventura movies, and he also wrote Bruce Almighty, and has worked on Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, as well as Barnyard. And in this movie, it uses footage from the 1976 Hong Kong martial arts film Tiger and Crane Fist, also called Savage Killers, along with new footage shot by O'Derrick to create an original unrelated plot, and basically turn this into a comedy, kind of on the same levels as something like, the two biggest examples I could give you right away is What's Up Tiger Lily, Woody Allen's movie, and then Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, which is Steve Martin's movie where he puts himself in these in these classic gangster movies from the 1940s. Two really good films, and I really thought this movie was not going to stick up. I mean, it was a movie that, when I saw the trailers for it, I really had no intentions of wanting to see it. I just didn't think it really looked all that funny, and the reviews for it were not that great. The movie didn't do too well at the box office, but it went on to have this kind of cult following to it, and a cult following that actually kind of worked in the film's favor. I mean, you look at a movie like movies that came out after this, like Kung Fu Hustle and Shaolin Soccer, which are two really good movies that have kind of a similar feel to this, except those are really original material, and that's what I kind of got when I saw this movie for the first time, because I had already seen Kung Fu Hustle and also Shaolin Soccer after that. And Steve O'Derrick does a pretty good job with this, honestly. Like, there are some scenes in here that don't work, but there are times when the movie can be very funny and very ridiculous, and I think it's because the movie knows it's got to be stupid to really work. It knows that it has a concept that really, in the right hands, it's got to work the way that they're selling you on this movie. I mean, not everything about it is going to work about it, and yeah, the jokes in here don't really work. Like, the big scene that was selling the movie was the cow fighting the chosen one, and it's very dated indeed. It definitely feels like something that is very much, the effects do not work so well, and it does hurt the ebb and flow of the movie a little bit, but at times, but then the movie comes back around and has those moments where you shouldn't be laughing, but you're really laughing at how funny some of these ridiculous things are, and I think it's a very funny movie. I don't think it's as good as something like a What's Up Tiger Lily or Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, but for what this guy did with this movie, I found myself enjoying it more than I thought I was going to. I think Nostalgia Critic, who just did a review of this movie not too long ago, made a lot of good points in that review about this film in general here, and it is a really fun, ridiculously stupid movie that knows what it is, and you go in there, you have a good time with it, and it delivers, for the most part, what it promises. A silly, fun movie, and a concept that on paper sounds terrible, but in the end actually turns out to be something really, really enjoyable. And it is a really enjoyable film. I definitely recommend it. Kung Pao Enter the Fist. And so with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll jump into February on the next episode with two movies, including Slackers, which is not the Richard Linklater movie, sorry. It's the one with Jason Segel and Jason Schwartzman involved in the cast, as well as Devon Sawa. And we also have Birthday Girl with Nicole Kidman in it. So we'll take a look at both of those movies next time. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.